Hi guys, good morning. So today we're going to be kind of finishing out our unit about ancient China. There's a lot more to learn about ancient China, but I want us to kind of finish it sooner rather than later just because I want us to move on so that we can have time to do all of the different civilizations. We've been having to move a little bit slowly for online school. And so hopefully we'll move a little bit faster now and kind of move through the different religions and the different civilizations a little bit faster. So today we're going to be talking about the Mandate of Heaven and a few things that were going on in the period that we're studying in ancient China. So before we get started, one more thing. Today your homework is going to be to just take a picture of your notes and send to me. So make sure that you're taking notes and that at the end of the video, you'll be ready to take a picture and send them. All right? You can also type your notes, but make sure that you're not just sending me screenshots of what I did, because then you're not learning anything, you're just taking a picture. Okay? So let's get started. The Mandate of Heaven. The first thing you need to know about this is the word mandate just means command. So rulers of ancient China believed that they were given permission to rule by a mandate or a command from heaven. So much like a lot of the other ancient rulers we've already talked about and the ones we will be talking about, they believed that the gods gave them permission to rule. The ruler was considered to be a link between heaven and earth. He was expected to be righteous and follow his religion and rule to please the gods. So it says his religion because depending on what era it was during Chinese history, he may have had a different religion. So we're going to define two words really quickly. Filial, which is the relationship between children and their parents, and piety. This means respect. So filial piety is respect of your elders and your family. So family is the most important thing to the ancient Chinese. Family is everything. If you've watched the movie Mulan, not the new one, but the old animated one, that one is all about a Chinese girl and her duty to honor her family. So a lot of this will sound kind of familiar if you've seen Mulan, because that movie does a really good job of showing you how important family is to the ancient Chinese, because she's willing to risk her life to bring honor to her family and to protect her dad. So your job, your duty, was to respect and honor the head of your family. So usually the head of your family is like a grandparent or maybe one of your parents, basically whoever's in charge in your family. Let's go back to the Mulan example really quickly. The head of Mulan's family would be her dad, because her job is to honor her dad, because he's kind of the person who's in charge of their household and who is the most respected in their household, even though he's not the oldest. So extended families also live together. We recognize this a lot because we do this here in Mexico. But I think this is a little bit bigger than most of our families. So extended families live together, and as many as 5 generations of people could live in the same house together. So what that means is, I know that a lot of you live with your mom and dad, probably your brothers and sisters, and your grandparents. Not everybody lives like that, but a lot of people have that kind of household where your grandparents live with you, maybe an aunt or an uncle live with you, maybe your brother or sister is an adult and they live with you, and maybe if they have children, their children live with you. That same kind of thing happened in ancient China, except it was much bigger than most of us do. So 5 generations of people could mean, let's say that I got married and had children. And we lived with my mom and dad. And we lived with my mom's mom and dad. And my mom's grandmother is still alive, my great-grandmother. And we lived with her. It would be like that. So it would be this huge line of people who are all related, but all live together. So this was super common for them. Most families lived this way. So they all had big houses because they had big families. Another thing that the early Chinese did was they practiced ancestor worship to honor their families. This is another reason I used Mulan as a good example. Because in the movie Mulan, they have that little temple outside where they have all of the different gravestones of her family members. And there are several scenes in the animated movie where she goes out and she's praying, or her father is praying, and the ancestors send Mushu to protect her because they worship their ancestors, and so their ancestors want to protect them and help her bring honor to their family. So I know we use Mulan as an example a lot, but Mulan is actually a really good way to explain how this works because they accurately show a lot of things about Chinese history. Again, not in the new one. The new one is very inaccurate, but the cartoon has a lot of things that would have actually probably happened. So Confucianism. Confucius was a Chinese teacher and philosopher. He lived during the 500s BC. I think he was born around 550. I don't remember if I'm correct about that, but somewhere around in there. And he helped create a philosophy through his desire to pass on ancient or forgotten teachings to others. Now, we call Confucianism a philosophy because in a religion, usually you have like a book that you read, like the Bible or the Torah or the Quran, or just some sort of writing that you use to base what you believe off of. So everybody who's that religion has one of those, has probably read most of it, if not all of it. So Confucianism doesn't have one of those, so we call it a philosophy because it's more of like a suggestion on how to live rather than actual guidelines and things. So Confucianism says there are 5 human relationships. The first one is the ruler and the ruled, so like someone in charge and whoever they're in charge of. Friend and friend, husband and wife, older sibling and younger sibling, and father and son. So Confucianism taught that we should treat each other justly or fairly in all of those relationships. And our job is to be compassionate to other people. So this directly influenced how leaders were chosen during the Han and Qin dynasties. So before, you were given a job based on who your dad was. So let's use the Mulan example again. The guy who's in the Chinese army, their leader, Shang, he has the job he has because his dad is the commander of the whole army, so he gave his son a job working underneath him. And when his dad dies in the movie, Shang becomes the leader of the army. Not because he did anything to earn being the leader of the army, but because his dad had been the leader of the army. So that's kind of a thing that happened all the time, anytime you had a job that was important or a job in leadership. Just like when a king died and his son became the next king or the next emperor, the same thing would happen in jobs like working as lawyers, being advisors to the king, being in the military, all of those kinds of things. So because of Confucianism, people started thinking that maybe instead of saying, oh, well, Miss Heather was a teacher, so Miss Heather's kid is going to be a teacher. Or Miss Heather's dad works in construction, so Miss Heather's brother is going to work in construction. Instead of saying something like that, they started asking themselves who was qualified to be a leader. So they started giving jobs based on merit instead of who your dad was. So merit means qualities, characteristics, or achievements. So basically it's saying, instead of who is your dad, who is your mom, it's do you deserve to have this job? Can you do it? This is a lot more like what we do today because we think that you should be qualified for whatever job you do. Now this next one, Taoism. I know it has a T and it makes a D sound. Sometimes you'll see this word spelled with a D instead of a T, but the most common spelling is Taoism. So that's the one I put. But if you're ever researching on your own, or we read something else in the future about it and it's spelled with a D, don't panic, same thing. There are a lot of words that are in languages that aren't English that have been translated into English, and we change the letters around because the sound is different. The same thing happens in Spanish sometimes and in other languages. When you're translating things, sometimes you change the spelling. And English, there's a lot of different spellings because there's an American and Canadian English, but there's also a English and European English. So there'll be a couple of different ways to spell this. Usually the Western way is with a T. Unless we're reading something from Europe, it might have a D. Otherwise, it'll be like this. So Taoism was developed in the 500s BC, just like Confucianism, and it was based on the writings of a man named Lao Tzu. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. There's a lot of Asian names that I'm not very good at pronouncing. Sometimes it'll be spelled like this instead of like this. Another one of those translation things. So they believe that happiness comes from leading a balanced life, at peace with nature, and living simple and selfless lives. So they believe that's how you be happy. You just live a really simple life, you be at peace with nature, you don't hurt things, and you just live your life as selflessly as possible. So this started out as a philosophy, just like Confucianism. There were no organized writings and things like that. But eventually, it became an organized religion because it had organized writings, it had texts that it followed, and it had multiple gods that they worshipped instead of just having an idea. So in modern China, today, Taoism and Buddhism are two of the most popular religions. We're not going to learn about Buddhism this time, but we'll talk about it. I believe the next time we talk about India, we'll talk about it. Because a lot of these countries we've already talked about, we'll have to come back and talk about again. So India and China, we'll probably talk about both of them a second time later on in the semester. Because other things happen. So Taoism, this isn't in your slide, but I'm going to tell you about it. Taoism is one that you might actually recognize because of the yin and yang symbol. So the little black and white circle symbol, that is reflecting Taoist beliefs because the belief is that everything is balanced. Even when there are things that are dark, in the darkness there's something light. Even when things are good and light, there's something dark inside of them. So that's something that you've probably seen before that you know is this religion. So just a little bit of context to help you figure out what this is, because I know you've heard of it before, you just probably haven't heard of the name of it. All right, so like I said, today your homework is to just send me a picture of your notes. Let me know if you have any questions about either of these, if there's anything you don't understand, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a good day, guys.